Before we start our presentation, our group would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet virtually today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We would also like to acknowledge the significance of birthing on country and recognise those who have been affected by social injustice and inequity during pregnancy or following the birth of their child, and the potentially transformative role that midwives might play in addressing this, especially in situations of adoption or fostering. For midwives, often the focus is on the care of the birthing woman and her unborn child. However, we also play an important role in the transition to parenthood for people who become parents in ways outside of what we view as the norm. Parenthood can look different for every family, and this can include the processes of surrogacy, both for the surrogate themselves and as the expected caregivers, adoption, both the birthing woman and the adoptive family, and having a child placed into foster care. As midwives, our role in the transition to parenthood remains vital, especially when caring for a woman who will not be returning home with her baby. The International Confederation of Midwives framework outlines that a midwife has a role in collaboratively developing plans with the woman and needs to apply cultural context when caring for non-traditional triads. Myself, Emily, and my fellow group members Laura, Narind and Louise will further elaborate on these topics and describe how midwives can assist new families in their transition to parenthood and the potential benefits that continuity of care can provide. The mother-baby dyad is a term that refers to the relationship between a woman and her baby. When discussing surrogacy, fostering or adoption, it is important to understand the relevant terms. Midwives should be aware of the multiple members of non-traditional family dynamics.
As midwives, we will have a crucial and privileged role in assisting a woman's transition to parenthood by offering advocacy and support, even if she does not have the care of her baby, as in adoption. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare in 2023 defined adoption as a process where full parental rights and responsibilities for a child are legally transferred from a child's parents to their adoptive parents. Between 2021 and 2022, only 208 adoptions were formalised in Australia. Open adoption is the form of adoption now used in Australia, as it has been identified as the best method to meet a child's emotional well-being and their identity needs. Within this method, the child is supported to remain connected to their birth family and cultural heritage from birth onwards. In New South Wales, consent to the adoption of a child cannot be formally given by the birth parents until at least 30 days after the baby's birth. Jones et al. In 2019 defined the transition to parenthood as a life-changing event, one where parents learn how to cope with their new roles and responsibilities. Research by Foley et al. In 2017 shows that the experience of this transition has the birth parents and adoptive parents alike facing similar issues. Examples include adjusting to being a new parent and coping with the demands of a baby. Adoptive parents have additional challenges, including a possible history of infertility, missing out on the pregnancy stage or some milestones of the child, as stated by Long et al. In 2022. Further research states that the adoptive parents are at the same risk or higher of developing depression post-adoption as birth parents after birth. There is limited research addressing the unique transition to parenthood for the birth parents in adoption. Castle in 2014 identified that the birth mother is likely to experience grief, trauma, criticism, and a lack of understanding from society, family, and their friends. However, it has also been identified that birth mothers tend to have a continued sense of maternal identity. This was reiterated by Collins and Wright in 2022. In open adoptions, Clutter in 2017 states that the birthing woman can experience positive emotions like peace, happiness, satisfaction, pride, and a sense of inner strength, especially when the child has not been forcibly removed due to concerns for the child's welfare. Castle in 2014 stated that adoption is a choice that only a very small number of women still make in Australia. It is important for midwives to understand and be educated about the adoption process and adoption triad, as this will enable the midwife to provide the best care for the birth mother who is considering or chooses adoption.
Australian Institute of Health and Welfare describes the national definition of out-of-home care as overnight care for children aged under 18 who are unable to live with their families due to child safety concerns. In 2021-22, the Institute's Child Protection Report outlined that 448 children under the age of 1 were admitted to out-of-home care in New South Wales. 212 were Indigenous children. This total includes court-ordered and voluntary placements. However, it's not clear how many babies entered foster care from birth. This presentation will focus on non-voluntary foster care, which involves a child being removed from their care of their parents when the child is considered to be at risk of significant harm, as outlined in Section 23 of the New South Wales Children and Young Persons Care and Protection Act of 1998. Section 44 of this Act gives the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice authority to assume parental responsibility of a baby, ensuring they remain in hospital until entering a foster care placement upon discharge. This is when foster carers usually meet the baby for the first time. According to research by Christine Marsh et al., women experiencing the removal of the baby following birth reported feelings of distress, sadness, anger, shame, guilt, loss, and disenfranchised grief. Additionally, the forced removal of a baby at birth is thought to impact a mother's ability to breastfeed and to build a healthy bond with her baby, thus impacting her transition to parenthood. There seems to be limited research regarding the role of a midwife throughout and after a baby's removal from its parent. Everett et al. Noted in 2017 midwives' desires to advocate for women, and in a prior 2015 article established that when midwives were aware of an impending removal of a baby, they wanted to provide a safe environment and be present for women during the process. This research also indicates that midwives tend to support women as they grieve the loss of the baby and care for them as they would a bereaving mother of a stillborn child. This could include providing opportunities to bond with their child and take photos, which could help the woman come to terms with their loss as she transitions into parenthood without her baby. Child removal can be unexpected, so unfortunately this preparation is not always possible. Research indicates that midwives have a role in advocating for women and want to develop open, clear communication throughout prenatal care, birth and postnatal care. This means difficult conversations can be held as concerns arise and trust is not broken if a woman's child enters care. This is where a continuity of care model can be beneficial for women who are at risk of their children entering out-of-home care. Everett, in her 2015 paper, states midwives have a unique opportunity to recognise vulnerable families during pregnancy, optimise health and well-being, and reduce serious harm to an unborn child.
In 2002, the World Health Organization described gestational surrogacy as a process where a person or couple commissions a woman to act as a host for their own genetic embryo, which they intend to raise after birth. Drivers include infertility, contraindications for pregnancy, and to enable same-sex couples to start a family. Commercial surrogacy is outlawed in New South Wales, where the surrogate is viewed as the legal parent under the Surrogacy Act 2010. There are limited legal options for the commissioning parents to gain full parental rights and recognition. Altruistic surrogacy without commercial gain is allowed. Society conventionally views the transition to parenthood as a time of joy and anticipation, but for intended parents, the surrogacy process creates unique uncertainty and challenges, whether altruistic or commercial. Kneeburn et al.'s 2022 meta-analysis found intended parents can experience loss of control during pregnancy, barriers accessing health updates about their surrogate and unborn infant, institutional challenges that exclude them from birth, labour and postnatal experiences. Armour's 2012 dissertation on American domestic surrogacy confirmed these challenges, which both authors found create anxiety, impact bonding, and the intended parent's transition to parenthood. In 2020, Montrone and colleagues published the largest study of Australian altruistic surrogacy to date, based on the experiences of 602 participants. Almost half of surrogate mothers were the sisters, sister-in-law or mothers of the intended parents, and another 46% were extended family or friends. While the study doesn't evaluate the midwifery continuity of care model for altruistic arrangements, we can assume the existing close relationships between intended parents and gestational carrier would facilitate their attendance and involvement in ongoing midwifery care appointments. This would help with early bonding, planning support for the surrogate mother, and participation in care plans for the birth and early postnatal period. An Iranian study demonstrated evidence for this approach in inducing lactation for intended mothers. In 2010, Shiva et al. Found longer preparation during pregnancy and intervention after birth showed higher success with intended mothers using surrogacy compared to adoptive mothers. Because the primary goal of breastfeeding was often bonding rather than nutrition, it was important for health professionals to understand what is important to the woman, present evidence and information to guide decisions, and use an empathetic and reflective approach to provide ongoing support. Continuity of care is ideally placed to support this approach and may be extended to the broader journey to parenthood for surrogacy participants.
As a midwife, it is important to provide consistent standards of antenatal and postnatal care for every woman, follow the woman's birth plan and understand what is important to her, encourage mother-baby bonding, be supportive, respectful and non-judgmental, facilitate access to information and referrals, be an advocate, and use appropriate language. Building connections with people over time encourages communication and develops trust. Continuity of care allows for monitoring during pregnancy, support for the mother, and improves connection between the woman and the midwife. It also enables a midwife to advocate and support a woman in all aspects of her pregnancy, birth, and the subsequent transition to parenthood, no matter the circumstances.